Yes, there's a lot of conversation around Joe Burrow, Cincinnati Bengals, Washington Commanders. They played last night on Monday Night Football. Along with Michelle Smallman, Chris Canty, Evan Cohen with you. Good morning, everybody.
Man, it's a great morning. I got my friends all in the studio with me. Let's go.
And me.
I'm talking about you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Did you know that Evan doesn't think we're friends?
Really?
Who, you two?
I said to him one day something about how he's a good friend, and he's like, we're friends? He didn't think we were friends.
He didn't think you and he were friends.
All of us.
Well, he knows that he and I are friends.
No, we're friends.
We've established.
So this was just about me.
This was established last week.
Yeah.
Oh,
So here's how I explained to Evan that we were friends.
Okay, tell me.
Because I told him where you could find free street parking in this neighborhood. Y'all know I live in the neighborhood near the new studio, and so I kind of know a few of the neighborhood hacks.
Yep.
And if I share with you where you can find free street parking, then that means that we down solid. Because I'm not telling somebody that there's free street parking so they can then in turn take all of the empty spots and leave me with no place to park.
You're looking out for him.
Plus, I trust him because I disclosed this information in confidence, believing that he wouldn't share it with anybody else.
And I didn't. Well, and I had an opportunity to. Someone walked up to me who we know, and the person is wonderful, and said, hey, where do you park? And I said, in the area. I gave an in the area.
And in the area. That's what you do.
He held it down.
I didn't lie.
Wow.
I didn't lie.
If it's an acquaintance or if it's a coworker, it's an in the area.
Okay.
If it's a real friend,
it's on the corner of this street.
Here
and
are
this
the
street.
cross streets.
Yep.
Very good.
That's how that works.
Okay, so you guys are friends. You've established.
Yeah.
And then
now these are first world problems in New York because most people don't drive. They don't have cars.
Correct.
Like if you have a parking spot or a garage spot in New York, you're paying 2 rents.
Luxury.
No doubt.
I wouldn't drive.
Just like a dishwasher and washer dryer in unit.
I am so New York poor. It's unbelievable.
I don't want to drive every day. I promise you that. But I have no choice because the train doesn't run as early as we come in. And today ends the streak. I had 5 straight days of free street parking, and I could not find a spot today. It took me a half hour to find a spot.
Did you come in later? What happened?
No. I just couldn't find a spot today for whatever reason. I don't know, and it's very frustrating.
He was very upset when he busted in.
Put me in a very bad mood. Put me in a very bad mood, honestly. All right, well, we had a preseason game last night. We had Monday Night Football. We had Joe and we had Troy and we had Rich Eisen afterwards.
How about the Open?
Everything is going in the direction of ESPN, which we love. And Rich joining us here on ESPN Radio, noon until 3 Eastern time, beginning on September 2nd. And the first thing that he was back a part of last night, Cincinnati Bengals and Washington Commanders, which is basically the holdout bowl that we saw last night between Terry McLaurin and Trey Hendrickson, and now there's all kinds of rumors about Brian Robinson Jr. and whether or not he gets traded. So the Bengals win the preseason game. Trey Hendrickson remains out, and here is the latest update from Laura Rutledge last night. ESPN Monday Night Football reporter, of course, NFL Live, had this to say about the latest with Trey Hendrickson.
I spoke to Trey Hendrickson just a little while ago. He reiterated that guaranteed money is the holdup in these contract negotiations with the Bengals. They agree, he said, on the average salary. They agree on the years, but Hendrickson believes his play warrants more guaranteed money than what the Bengals want to pay, even though he turns 31 in December. Now, Hendrickson also confirmed that there has been no progress here, and he is prepared to sit out if needed. It's also worth noting that there's been no progress toward any trades either. That hasn't even gotten close. Hendrickson wanted to make it very clear, though. He said, I don't feel sorry for myself. His quote was, I'm a very blessed man, and I trust in God's plan here. He also pointed to the Bengals logo on his shirt and said, this place means a lot to me. I'm still wearing this logo proudly, and said he just wants to do the very best he can to help this defense out.
Okay, so there's a lot here to digest.
Yeah.
But let's first get the actual understanding of the definitions of what Laura is saying as it relates to the NFL sack leader over the last 2 years who plays on a team with a quarterback that's a top 5 QB in the league in Joe Burrow. When Laura says they've agreed on the years and they've agreed on the money, just not the guarantees, explain how that could happen, that they could agree on all these things, but not the guarantees.
Well, it's about the organization's commitment from a cash flow standpoint to Trey Hendrickson long term. If you're agreeing on the years and the APY, then the only thing left to discuss is how big of an escrow check ownership has to write upon signing, because that's what happens with the guaranteed money. So without going too far into the weeds, anytime you see a player's total guarantee in a contract, every NFL owner has to write a check to be put in escrow for that amount. So from a cash flow standpoint, it can get a little bit dicey in terms of an organization's commitment. If you think about how expensive this offseason has been for the Cincinnati Bengals, paying Jamar Chase a ton of money, paying T. Higgins a ton of money, big signing bonuses, big guarantees, then all of a sudden you can understand why the Cincinnati Bengals would be a little bit reticent to dole out yet another big guarantee. But to that, I would say this. You have a window with this core of players to compete for a championship. If you're not willing to go all in for this group, then who will you go all in for? That's the question I would pose to Mike Brown and General Manager Duke Tobin. If you're not willing to push all your chips to the middle of the table for Joe Burrow, who is literally out there in the second preseason game fighting with second and third string receivers in order to try to get better. If you're not willing to go all in for that dude, then who are you willing to go all in for? It makes no sense how the Cincinnati Bengals have handled Trey Hendrickson to let the guarantees into year 2 and year 3 of a contract extension be the sticking point for a guy that's led the NFL in sacks over the last 2 years. Makes no sense.
And you knew this was coming. You knew that this was something that you needed to budget for or that you needed to have a finite decision on prior to this season. You knew that T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson were going to get paid. And if Joe Burrow, who is the face of your franchise, is publicly campaigning for the 2 receivers, then you knew that there was going to be a tough decision on the table there. And you either protect your quarterback from himself by saying, hey, this is what you want, but the vulnerability on this team is the defense. And if we remove the anchor of that unit, the NFL sack leader from the equation, we're not going to be competing for a championship. We're going to continue to be on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs. If they don't make that decision for him, then they need to make another decision and be proactive about moving on from him or trying to figure this out earlier. The fact that they have gotten to this point in the offseason and we're still here talking about guaranteed money with Trey Hendrickson, I can't fathom what they're doing, especially for an organization that has to get off to a fast start and historically has not.
Here's the thing I also don't understand, because the structure of the deal is the sticking point, right? The guarantees. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Cincinnati Bengals broke their own rule this offseason when they signed Jamar Chase. Outside of quarterbacks, they don't like beyond the first year of a contract extension. They did that with Jamar Chase. They gave him $74 million guaranteed at signing. So you already broke your own rule. You broke your own precedent. How would you accept, how could you accept a deal that doesn't do the same thing if you're Trey Hendrickson, if they've already done it for Jamar Chase?
Yeah, I mean, this is
that makes no sense.
Like, this is great information and great opinion. And all of this is about one person. It's all about Joe Burrow. Like, that's the most interesting part of this, is what is his reaction? Why did he say what he said about the wide receivers? How is the team going to be structured? The Bengals, as you mentioned, et cetera, in terms of, if you're not going to go in for this guy, who are you going to go in for? Here's what Burrow had to say about the Trey Hendrickson situation.
Yeah, I don't know. I think historically, these deals with us have gotten done closer to week 1. I signed on the Thursday before the first game. And Jamar's started to pick up, that week before last year too. But I think historically, the way we've done business is, that tends to pick up here in the next 2 weeks. So we'll see.
Okay, so he's just assuming it's going to get done. If you watched any part of that game last night, when the starters were in, that defense was so horrific early on by the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, they allowed right off the bat a Deebo Samuel run for 19 yards, a Chris Rodriguez Jr. run for 40 yards, and then a Jaden Daniels 14-yard touchdown. All on the first drive of that game, the 4 plays that Jaden Daniels played. And I believe, and Joe Burrow is not at fault for what I'm about to say, I believe that there has become such a narrative around hyping Joe Burrow up, similar to the prime of Aaron Rodgers' career, that you look at him, throw the football, and you're like, he's got to be better than Brady and Manning in the case of Rodgers. Oh, my God, Burrow's got to be better than Lamar and Josh and Mahomes. He's just not. What's going on right now with the Cincinnati Bengals is awesome for Joe Burrow supporters. Because what's going to happen? Their defense will stink. He'll throw the ball a ton. His numbers will be through the roof. They'll be playing from behind. They'll score a lot of points, and you'll get your MVP vote. This is a blessing for all of those people that want to die on the Joe Burrow hill. Congratulations. You should root against Trey Hendrickson getting signed. Joe Burrow got what he wants. He got the 2 receivers. He's going to score a ton of points. He's an awesome quarterback. The narrative works. You have to root against Trey Hendrickson signing if you're a Joe Burrow fan.
But don't you want to see Joe Burrow compete for a championship if you're a Joe Burrow fan?
Because that's out the window.
But that's the marker of greatness, is whether or not you can compete for and win Super Bowls. Because guess what? If he gets the MVP, then he's in the Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson combo. Okay, you've done it individually. Where's the team success? The goalpost is going to move.
But I was under the impression that the Joe Burrow supporters, who are blind to everything other than Joe Burrow's greatness, and he is great. I'll take him on my team any day of the week. He is great. I was under the impression that the Joe Burrow supporters threw the Super Bowl out the window. Because the moment you said yes to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, it's over. The Super Bowl window is over the moment you say yes to paying those 2 receivers. So now your focus, if you're a fan of his, is just on his greatness. Not team greatness, just his greatness.
I'm not going to say the Super Bowl window is over. They just don't have any margin for error.
Well, they're already erroring, if that's a word. They don't have a defense.
No, they don't. And that's the point, right?
You're sitting here as a Super Bowl champ because defense matters not as much as quarterback, but it matters.
Yeah, ironically, the Cincinnati Bengals, from a total defense standpoint, were better than the year that we won the Super Bowl.
Which I still don't understand.
Which is wild. But anyway, I digress. I just point this out because I think it matters. This is a fascinating experiment in roster building in 2025.
Yep.
I haven't seen a lot of teams compete at a high level and win a championship building a team quite like this. Nobody spends a greater percentage of the cap on the offensive side of the ball than the Cincinnati Bengals. So defense, as far as I'm concerned, is not an excuse. Now, from their perspective, I'm sure that they believe they're building a championship team, much like what we saw from the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning in 2006 when they beat the Chicago Bears. That was a team that had 2 Hall of Fame wide receivers, a team that had a pretty good tight end in Dallas Clark, a running back on a rookie deal in Joe Adai, and then they had a Hall of Famer at defensive end, and they had Defensive Player of the Year in Bob Sanders.
So Dwight Freeney and Bob Sanders.
Yeah, like that's I believe that's what the Cincinnati Bengals think they're doing from a philosophical standpoint. It doesn't matter that we can't stop the run on defense, because our defense is not going to have to worry about playing the run. The scoreboard is going to dictate to opposing offenses that they can't run because our offense is going to be lighting it up. They can believe that, but they have no margin for error on the offensive side of the ball if they're going to play that way. That is a ton of pressure to put on Joe Burrow. And at some point, you're going to have somebody relieve that pressure. And I don't know that they have a phase of their football team that can do that from a defensive standpoint, from a special team standpoint.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think they're way more like the current Miami Dolphins than they are the 06 Colts. Spend a lot of money at wide receiver and quarterback and have nothing else outside of that. That would be my guess. But again, the Joe Burrow fans want to argue that Joe Burrow is so great, which he is. His greatness will show based on rings.
Stop talking about the defense, though.
Yeah, you chose not to have the defense.
Stop talking about the defense being an issue.
Agree with you 1,000%.
Stop talking about the defense being an issue. You got to stop that.
You chose that.
You chose that. He chose that.
I agree.
All right.
And you guys out there should choose ESPN Bet.
Like no doubt. Listen, your fantasy draft is here. The smack talk, let it begin. The season is starting and ESPN Bet is giving you...
Cowboys Nation, you better sit down for this one. Imagine an offense where defenses have no answer. Picture this. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and Terry McLaurin all wearing the star on their helmets. Yeah, that's not just a Madden fantasy lineup anymore. That's a real possibility, and it could create the most terrifying wide receiver trio in the entire NFL. Today we're diving into the trade rumors swirling around Terry McLaurin, why Washington might actually move him, what a realistic trade package from Dallas could look like, and most importantly, what this would mean for Dak Prescott, Mike McCarthy's offense, and the Cowboys' chances of finally bringing that Lombardi back to Dallas. So let's set the stage. Terry McLaurin, one of the most consistent wideouts in the NFL, has officially requested a trade from the Washington Commanders. He's frustrated with the lack of a long-term extension, and honestly, you can't blame him. Washington's been a mess offensively, and McLaurin has still managed to put up numbers year after year. Last season, even in a bad offensive situation, McLaurin hauled in 86 catches for 1,152 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's his 4th straight 1,000-yard season. And keep in mind, this guy has done it with quarterbacks like Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell, and Jacoby Brissett. Imagine what he could do with Dak Prescott, who just led the league in touchdown passes in 2024. Now let's talk fit. If Dallas pulls this off, you're looking at CeeDee Lamb as the precise route runner and volume monster, George Pickens as the physical, contested catch nightmare, and McLaurin as the field-stretching, silky smooth route technician. This isn't just a trio, this is a nightmare for defensive coordinators. Zone coverage? McLaurin eats it alive. Man coverage? Good luck sticking with him. And you can't double all 3 receivers. Somebody is always going to be open. That means Dak would have the cleanest looks of his entire career. And don't forget, defenses already have to worry about Jake Ferguson in the middle and Tony Pollard's replacement, whether it's Rico Dowdle or one of the new backs in the backfield. Adding McLaurin could make this Cowboys offense top 3 in the league easy. So what would it take? According to reports, a potential package that would work is this. Cowboys receive WR Terry McLaurin, Commanders receive WR Jalen Tolbert plus a 2026 second round pick. Now, let's be honest, that's a steal. Dallas would essentially be trading a depth receiver and a second rounder for a proven top 15 wideout. And with McLaurin still under contract through 2026, you're not just renting him, you're locking down an elite receiver in his prime. The question is, will Jerry and Stephen Jones actually pull the trigger? Or will they do what they've done in the past? Flirt with the idea of a blockbuster move but never actually commit? Cowboy fans, you know the frustration here. If this trade happens, you're not just adding talent, you're sending a message. You're telling the NFL that the Dallas Cowboys are done playing games and are all in on chasing a Super Bowl. And think about what this means in January. Picture the NFC playoffs, Cowboys against the Eagles or Cowboys against the 49ers. When the game slows down and you need a playmaker, Dak could pick from Lamb, Pickens, or McLaurin. That's unfair. That's dominance. For perspective, last season, Dallas finished 5th in total offense and Dak had over 4,700 passing yards. Adding McLaurin could push Dak over 5,000 yards, and this offense could be averaging over 30 points per game. That's championship level firepower. Cowboys Nation, I need to hear from you on this one. Should Jerry Jones make the move and bring Terry McLaurin to Dallas? Would you give up Jalen Tolbert and a second round pick for a proven star who's still just 29 years old? Or do you think Dallas should keep building with what they've got? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to know if you're all in on forming the scariest wide receiver trio in the NFL. And hey, if you love the idea of Lamb, Pickens, and McLaurin lighting up defenses in 2025, hit that like button, share this video with a fellow Cowboys fan, and subscribe to Dallas Cowboys today so you don't miss a single update. I'm Victor, and as always, how about them Cowboys?